Welcome everyone to our Packers News Friday edition of our live chat alongside Ryan Wood. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers suffered a big loss yesterday after left tackle David Bakhtiari went down with a season-ending knee injury in practice. We will give you the latest on Bakhtiari's injury, plus we will also give you our final thoughts on the Packers' weekend matchup against the Chicago Bears in just a moment. Before we get into that, as always, you can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us your questions down in the chat. Ryan and I know you have a lot on your mind. We want to hear from you. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. Left tackle David Bakhtiari was injured yesterday in practice, sustaining a season-ending knee injury. The Packers believe it is an ACL tear. However, we don't have that confirmed just yet. How does Bakhtiari's injury impact not only the entire offensive line, but the offense as a whole?
It's everything. He's one of the best players on the team. He's quite possibly the best pass blocker in the NFL. There's a reason why he's the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. It's a brutal loss, and that's just on the field. And yes, I get that he can still be around the team. He's still going to be in the locker room. And if you know anything about David Bakhtiari, his leadership is going to be strong. But it's obviously different when you're on the field and the impact that you can have off the field. And it's going to be a learning process for them because he's always been available. He's missed a few games here and there, but nothing like this. So it's going to be a massive adjustment for this team to make. And the bottom line, Olivia, is that from Matt LaFleur's standpoint, from Aaron Rodgers' standpoint, they can dial up any play they want at any time. Aaron Rodgers can take his time in the pocket. He can feel comfortable because he knows with David Bakhtiari on the field, his blind side is protected. And now there's an added degree of uncertainty that did not exist before. Billy Turner was phenomenal as a left tackle. Elton Jenkins, a Pro Bowl left guard, was good when he at San Francisco had to slide out to left tackle. Those are good players. They're not David Bakhtiari. They're not an all-pro left tackle. There's only one of those, and so yeah, I mean it's a massive loss for this team.
Bakhtiari's injury is the second season-ending knee injury sustained on the offensive line this season. Guard Lane Taylor sustained a season-ending ACL tear earlier in the very first week of the regular season. The Packers' offensive line as a whole has had 5 knee injuries together. How exactly should the Packers expect to see Bakhtiari's recovery process play out, and when should they expect him to return?
Yeah, so the quickest that I've ever seen anyone come back from this myself was probably Brian Bulaga a few seasons ago when he had the torn ACL on Monday Night Football in mid to early November against the Detroit Lions. He came back for the start of the next season. It's a minimum 9 months, and he just got back for the start of that season, having had that happen in mid-November, not late December. So you're looking at most likely, and I know Matt LaFleur said that he thinks David Bakhtiari will come back a lot sooner than most. And I don't think there's any reason to doubt that with his youth, with his athletic ability, with his drive and his work ethic. But you're looking at September needing to figure out what to do at left tackle as well. Olivia, it's remarkable because this team for almost 2 full years now has had nothing but just immaculate fortune when it comes to the health of the roster. Lane Taylor's torn ACL week 1 in Minnesota is the only season-ending injury that a key starter has had in 2 years with Matt LaFleur. And they've, in a lot of ways, created their own fortune. Matt LaFleur, since the day he was hired, they have not had 3 hard practices in a row, even in camp. You see now why they did not play Devontae Adams when he felt like he could play. They did not play Aaron Jones in Houston when he felt like he could play. It was specifically to avoid this type of situation, and they get to where the finish line is in sight. I mean, the padded practice portion of their schedule was done. This was a non-padded practice. They get to this point, and a completely freak deal, which is what Matt LaFleur pointed. Something that you can't avoid happens, and it's just at some point every NFL team runs into this, and you don't want it to happen now, and you don't want it to happen to this guy, but it's unavoidable. It's going to happen at some point, and it has.
Bakhtiari missed 3 games earlier this season with a chest injury. Luckily for the Packers, they have the depth at tackle to address Bakhtiari's loss at the time and now. Back then, right tackle Billy Turner ended up switching over to left tackle, playing tackle there, and then Rick Wagner came in at right tackle. Guard Elton Jenkins also has some experience working in at left tackle. Who are the Packers most likely to use at each tackle position this upcoming weekend against the Bears?
Yeah, the fact that Rick Wagner is available, one, that's a really, really good thing for the Packers because it ensures that depth. And what they did in the 3 games that David Bakhtiari missed midseason with the rib injury was if Rick Wagner was available, he was the right tackle and Billy Turner was the left tackle. And again, he played very well in that role. In San Francisco, when Rick Wagner went out with injury during the game, they slid Elton Jenkins at halftime over to left tackle and then Billy Turner back to right tackle. But if Rick Wagner's available, I think that you're looking at him being right tackle. He got the start in his last game over Lucas Patrick because of how well he was playing at right tackle. So if he's on the field, you're likely to see him at right tackle and Billy Turner at left tackle.
The Bears' defensive front has a formidable pass rush in linebackers Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, nose tackle Bilal Nichols. The 3 of them combined have 17 sacks on the season. How much does the Packers' pass protection need to change heading into this game against the Bears without David Bakhtiari?
Well, let's not forget, this was already going to be a completely different Bears defensive front because Akeem Hicks is available this week, and he did not play in late November at Lambeau Field. So even with David Bakhtiari, this was going to be a much more formidable defensive front that they were going against. Now without David Bakhtiari, it's just amplified, obviously. They're going to have to do some things. You know, Akeem Hicks is not a perimeter defensive lineman. He's not an edge guy. He's a guy that's going to be inside. But even still, with so many things moving and interchanging right now, it's going to be an adjustment.
In Bears injury news, defensive backs Jalen Johnson and Buster Skrine are out this weekend with shoulder and a concussion, respectively. How does that impact the Packers' advantage in the passing game this upcoming weekend?
Well, it's a little tit for tat, I guess. I mean, they don't have their left tackle, so protection is certainly expected to not be what it is with David Bakhtiari on the field. When that's the case, you want to get rid of the football quicker. Going against backup quarterbacks certainly helps that. So, it's an advantage for the Packers that they desperately need, considering that the uncertainty with their protection. We'll have to see if Aaron Rodgers is able to take advantage of that.
Johnson leads the team in pass breakups. We'll see exactly how much of an impact it has on the game on Sunday. Let's go over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions today. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Happy New Year. It's our first live stream of 2021. Let's take a question over here. Who should we start with here? We'll start with David. David seems to think that the offensive line combination will involve Elton Jenkins at left tackle, John Runyon Jr. at left guard, Corey Linsley at center, Lucas Patrick at right guard, and Turner at right tackle. How likely is it that Elton Jenkins gets the nod at left tackle and ends up rearranging the entire complexion of the offensive line?
It all comes down to what Rick Wagner's availability is. He was limited in practice this week. Even today, he was limited. So, yeah, he was dropped from the injury report, so that would seem to indicate that he is available. But being available and being ready to go out and play every snap is not always the same thing. You can have a guy who's there just in emergency cases. If he's good to go, and Matt LaFleur said they're going to give him the week, if Rick Wagner's good to go, I would expect him to be the right tackle and Billy Turner to be the left tackle. That way you can keep your Pro Bowl left guard where he needs to be. And Lucas Patrick started, 14 games at right guard this season? You can keep him at right guard, which is where he's played very well and he's been comfortable at.
Thanks so much, David, for your question. Let's go over to YouTube. Pack Attack has a question. They want to know, will defensive lineman Damon Harrison be active due to Kingsley Keke not being able to go this week? Kingsley Keke is still working through the concussion protocol. He will not be active in this weekend's game. The Packers have already ruled him out. However, the Packers picked up Damon Harrison off of waivers earlier this week. He has only been working with the Packers for a few days. How likely is it that he is ready to go and play this weekend against the Bears?
Yeah, the fact is that he is available because he'd already been with the team. And so he doesn't have to wait the mandatory 5 days to pass through the COVID protocols. He's able to go now. And, you saw Anthony Rush when he was here. He came in a young player. It took a couple weeks, and he was inactive at first. But he's a guy that hadn't played much at this level. Damon Harrison, he's in his 9th season. He's played with this is his 5th different team. So he knows how to come in and acclimate himself. He just done this a month ago with Seattle, so this isn't anything new. He's the type of veteran that you can put out there for a handful of snaps, if nothing else, as a depth guy. I would imagine he'll be available, and I wouldn't be surprised if he played.
Thanks, Pack Attack, for your question. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Let's go back over to Facebook. Zach wants to know if there's any chance that the Packers try to sign former Packers backup tackle Jared Veldheer off the Colts practice squad. The Colts literally signed Veldheer to their practice squad earlier this week. The timing, if the Packers were even interested in bringing back Veldheer, who hasn't played football all season and most recently was working with the Packers last season, and the Packers added him as a late addition. With the likelihood that the Colts make it to the playoffs, they need to win this game in order to make it there. If the Packers are even interested and Veldheer is even available, if the Colts don't make the playoffs, how likely is it that they would attempt to sign him?
I don't see it. They've got Billy Turner, they've got Rick Wagner, they've got Elton Jenkins, who can step out and play tackle at a fairly low level. So they've got three guys right there that they feel good about. And they've also got a lot of interior offensive line depth. So, for example, if they had to move Elton Jenkins out to left tackle, they could put in a John Runyon Jr. He's played very well when given the opportunities this year. So it's not a situation where they've got three guys, but if you move one guy outside, then you're leaving yourself vulnerable inside. They've got depth inside in spades, and they've got three guys that they feel like can man the two tackle positions. I wouldn't expect it.
Thanks, Zach, for your question. Let's go over to Nick on Facebook. Nick wants to know, how are all three running backs going to be used in the Packers offense this weekend? Head coach Matt LaFleur is going to be tasked with distributing snaps to running backs A.J. Dillon, Jamal Williams, and Aaron Jones. Williams is off of the injury report this week after he was dealing with a quadriceps injury this past week. He is available and ready to go this upcoming weekend. A.J. Dillon is coming off of a 2-touchdown performance against the Tennessee Titans. How is Matt LaFleur going to divide up the snaps among all three of his running backs?
Yeah, I asked running backs coach Ben Simmons exactly that yesterday, and the difficulty of getting three guys involved when there's only one football. He made things very, very clear. It starts with Aaron Jones. He is the starter. Matt LaFleur feels like there are three starting caliber running backs in his backfield, but there is only one starter. It starts with Aaron Jones. It's going to, from here on out, as long as he's healthy and available, the run game is going to flow through him, just like the passing game flows through Devontae Adams. But there's a lot of depth there. It's tough to see A.J. Dillon after last week out rushing Derrick Henry, just being pushed to the back burner again. He's a guy that you're going to want to get involved. Jamal Williams, there's things that he does that Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon don't do as well. He's the best pass blocker. And that's a little bit more important now, obviously, without David Bakhtiari. I mean, that's a premium pass protection. And Jamal Williams, that's his specialty. He's very, very solid in pass pro. So, he's going to find the field too, but again, it all starts behind Aaron Jones. The other two are going to fill in the gaps behind them.
Thanks so much, Nick, for your question. Let's take a question here from Jim on Facebook. Jim wants to know, has wide receiver Equanimeous St. Brown moved ahead of wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling in the depth chart? Valdes-Scantling wasn't targeted against the Titans. St. Brown, however, was targeted on a 21-yard touchdown, his first touchdown of his career. Where has Equanimeous St. Brown, I suppose, I should word it differently. How exactly will St. Brown and Marquez Valdes-Scantling be used in this offense going forward, especially this upcoming weekend against the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think MVS has pretty well established himself as that number two guy. He's got over 600 receiving yards this season. He's had a bounce back year, 5 touchdowns. He's averaging almost 20 yards per catch, which is the highest in the NFL. So you can make a case that he might be the best deep threat, best pure deep threat in the league. Things that he gives this offense, nobody else does, because he is the vertical threat of this offense. He stretches the defense out. So I don't think MVS has got much to be worried about as far as being planning.
Thanks so much, Jim, for your question. Let's go over to Periscope. Badger in Canada 1 has a question. Where in Canada are you from? Let us know in the comments. Last year's finale at Detroit was a huge clunker after the big win at Minnesota. Chances that happens again. The The Packers have a lot on the line this weekend. They have an opportunity to secure the #1 seed in the NFC, which would give them a first-round bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. What kind of energy do you anticipate the Packers coming out with this weekend?
Well, I think the chances are higher than if you would have asked me this a day ago. Without David Bakhtiari and Matt LaFleur said that that there was kind of a pall that came over the field yesterday when that injury happened. It was tough to refocus, and he said that they came back today and in today's practice. He said it wasn't perfect, but it was clean. He was proud of the way the guys came back. But until you get out on the game field, it's an unknown. We don't know how this team's going to respond to that. You'd like to think a veteran team like this would respond well, but I think it's a fair uncertainty to have. And then on top of that, they're not as good without David Bakhtiari. You don't just lose an all-pro left tackle and not suffer from that. That's going to make you a worse team. Just like if they were to lose Davante Adams, it would make them a worse team. Jair Alexander would make them a worse team. So, it's going to be very interesting. A day ago, I would have told you this is a very different team than last season. Yes, I know that they're 13-3, just like or going for 13-3, just like they were 13-3 last year. But this, to me, would be a very different 13-3. The offense has been so dynamic that it's a different team. Now without David Bakhtiari, we don't really know what this team is right now.
Thank you, Badger in Canada, who is from Calgary. Thank you so much for your question. We appreciate it. Let's go over to Justin over on Facebook. Justin wants to know, when do the Packers start trying to extend wide receiver Davante Adams? Adams becomes a free agent after the 2021 season. When should the Packers start to work on coming up with an extension for their Pro Bowl wide receiver?
Yeah, I think it's something to be discussed next year with the year that he's had. I think that's a fair expectation to have. When you have a historic year and you're coming up on the final year of your contract, that's something that is kind of business as usual. It's standard operating procedure. So the difficulty with that, if they do discuss this in the spring, is the cap. It's going to dip $20 million. There are going to be a lot of cap maneuverings and gymnastics to get under. They're going to not just them. Every team in the NFL is going to have to at some point make some difficult decisions. Not extending Davante Adams is not one of those difficult decisions to make, but just in order to make that possible, to get to that point, there's going to be the difficult decisions they have to make.
Thanks so much, Justin, for your question. Let's go over to Robin on Facebook. Robin wants to know if the Packers defense will be able to get quarterback Mitch Trubisky to force some bad throws. Trubisky has thrown 7 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions in the last 3 games. How likely is it that the Packers can force him to make some bad decisions and turn the ball over?
What did Tramon Williams say after the opener in Chicago last season? Make Mitch Trubisky play quarterback. I don't think that changes. Yes, I get that Mitch Trubisky, he had a 75 rating at Lambeau Field a month ago. Since then, in 4 games, he's averaging well over 100 passer rating. But they were not playing teams that were just held the Tennessee Titans to 14 points. They were playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Houston Texans, the Lions, the Vikings. Defenses that are not that's not a murderer's row of defense. So this is a different challenge for the Bears, and I think that the Packers they'll try to make Mitch Trubisky play quarterback. To something they've always done and something he's really rarely been able to do against them.
Thank you, Robin, for your question, and thank you all so much for joining us today. Happy New Year. We will be back to preview the game 90 minutes before kickoff on Sunday, so make sure you come back to Packers News, Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. You know the drill. For Ryan Wood, I am Olivia Reiner. We'll see you next time.